Welcome to the Ian McNaughton Show. Thank you for joining us. It's great to be back. It's been a while since we've been on the air. My name is Ian McNaughton. I'm your host today. In case you're new to the Ian McNaughton Show, essentially, this is basically just a show for myself, and I get to talk about all the stuff that I want to talk about, so I don't have to take up airtime on it on the Speak Your Piece podcast. Because this is a Speak Your Piece podcast, but not the Speak Your Piece podcast. In case you aren't already following us or you don't know what Speak Your Piece is, go follow us on Instagram at Speak Your Piece. We got a great show for you today. I'm currently in Vancouver. It's about 10 after noon here. I'm just sipping some coffee here. I'm on my third coffee of the day. So basically right now it's Monday, February 1st. Today we're going to be discussing rugby. We got some big rugby matches coming up this weekend. Six Nations starting up once again this Saturday. We'll also go into some of the World Rugby Sevens series and what some of the Sevens matches are going to look like probably this month, going into the Olympics, if we are going to have Olympics, and then in the fall of 2021 as well. Then we got a couple of notes that we got for the 2021 Rugby World Cup, the Women's World Cup, which will take place in New Zealand this summer, or September, I should say. And then a bit of news surrounding new World Cup hosts coming up in the future. So let's get into it. The Six Nations this weekend will take place on Saturday and Sunday. We'll give you a bit of a schedule here. Saturday, Italy will host France in Rome. Also on Saturday, England hosts Scotland. The Calcutta Cup will take place at Twickenham. And then Sunday, Wales are hosting Ireland in Millennium Principality Stadium. Their main stadium. It'll be the first time in almost a year that Millennium Stadium in Cardiff will be hosting a rugby match. I'll go through each of the teams, and then I'll talk a bit about the games this upcoming weekend and what to expect there. We'll start with France because I want to start with France. I'm kind of just going through each game as they are, and then the teams. This is not like a rankings. I'm not ranking them on who I think is going to win, but I can give my predictions later on. France will be without Roman Nidamak, who is their fly half. I believe they're 10. He's still recovering from a jaw injury that he got in the fall. I believe he had surgery for it. There hasn't been a whole lot of news that I've been able to find on him. I think it's been pretty hush-hush on Nidamak, but he will not be participating in this year's Six Nations, which is really too bad because he's one of my favorite players. He's incredible to watch. He's speedy. He's smart. He's really fun. Also not playing in the Six Nations is Virimi Bakatawa. He pulled out due to a knee injury, so he will not be participating as well. But replacing Nidamak, I think the guy they're going to look towards is Matthew Gelabert, who's a younger player, but is still growing. He's still maturing. He doesn't have quite the same chemistry with Antoine Dupont as Nidamak does, but he's learning. He's getting better. He's still a fantastic player, and he still has a lot of room to grow, but he's not quite Nidamak. It's kind of unfair to compare anybody to Nidamak. But Gelabert is most likely to replace, I would think, Nidamak at the 10. Gelabert he's had 8 previous appearances with France in international events. He's now 22 years old. He's best remembered for his time with the under-20 team with France that they went back-to-back into 2018 and 2019 World Under-20 Championship. So Gelabert was a part of that team, and now he's getting called up to the big squad. Speaking of U20 stars, Louis Carbonell will also get some time at fly half. I would think he might even get the starts. I think Gelabert will probably get most of the starts, the main action, but Carbonell will definitely get some time as well. He also was a part of the team that went back to back at the World Under 20s in 2018, 2019. Charles Olivan is still captain. He scored 5 tries since being named captain in January 2020. He's a wonderful captain. France are very lucky to have him. So it'll be nice to see him back in action as well. And of course, I mentioned him earlier. Antoine Dupont. Dupont is the scrum half. He's their 9. He is one of the best scrum halves in the world. Incredible talent. France are very lucky to have him, and I can't wait to see how he performs coming up in these Six Nation matches. So France, they're at Italy this weekend, February 6th. On Valentine's Day, February 14th, they're at Ireland in Dublin. February 28th, they host Scotland. And then March 13th, they're at England. And March 20th, they're hosting Wales. So 3 road matches, 2 home matches for France in this year's Six Nations. They are probably going to finish, I would think, first or second in the Six Nations. They're just that good. They're a phenomenal team, at least top 5 in the world right now. France is. I don't know that they're at the England tier. They had a great match with England in the Autumn Nations Cup final that went to sudden death. That was about as good as the French team can play, and they went toe to toe with England, fought all game with them, and they just came up a little short. That's kind of how I expect France to be this year as well. Italy is entering another year of Six Nations. I think this is their 21st year of being in the Six Nations. That seems about right. Legendary captain and former 8 for Italy, Sergio Parisse. He might finally play his final international game. External circumstances have kind of prevented him from getting there. He was going to play his final game against New Zealand at the 2019 Rugby World Cup, but that was canceled due to Typhoon Hagibis. I would know I was supposed to go to that, and it didn't work out. And then he was going to play, I think England was going to be his last match. He was going to play England at home in the last game of the Six Nations, and due to COVID-19, it just didn't work out. He, no crowds, and he just wants to have a big send off. So he might get that this time around. Who knows? Nobody's really too sure about that. A guy to watch out for Italy is Paolo Gabrisi. He's their 20-year-old fly half. He made his first appearance for Italy last year. He's going to be someone I think they count on a bit more this year. And of course, Jake Pellegrini is my boy, my Italian stan. Pellegrini is I don't know if he's recovered fully from his injury. He had to miss the remaining Autumn Nations, Six Nations because of an injury he suffered. So he might be back. I don't know for sure. Again, it's kind of like the Nidimac thing where, news is kind of slow. No one's pushing that information out there. They'll likely finish last again in this tournament, I would think. But head coach Franco Smith, he's got the team trending upwards. I think Italy is going in the right direction. They had a few bright moments last year. Maybe they'll have a few bright moments again this year. And Italy and Scotland, those matches could be on upset alert with Wales or with Italy. Italy might be able to pull off an upset with either one of those two teams. It's unlikely, but just that's why it's an upset. Just keep an eye on that. So yeah, they host France in Rome on Saturday, and then they're at England February 13th. They host Ireland February 27th. They host Wales on March 13th, and then they're at Scotland on March 20th. So Italy probably will finish last, but I like Italy just as a kind of not rebuilding because they've never been a great team, but as a team that's working and progressing to become one of the top teams. So watch out for Italy. Italy's got some good players that you'll want to take a look at. England, arguably the best team in the world right now. They are really, really, really talented. I can't say enough about England. Bad news though, Sam Underhill, he's their flanker, so he'll play either the 6 or the 7. He'll miss the tournament with a hip injury, which is a big loss for England. He's one of their best defenders, one of their best tacklers, and it'll be tough without him. They're still a really good team, but it'll be tough without Underhill. Maro Itoje, oh my God, that dude is awesome. Itoje is so fucking good. He's got some swagger. He's got the energy. I mostly just watch England for him. Like, he is just sensational. Love Itoje. He's one of the best in the world, top 5 for sure. And he's going to be a big reason why England wins the Six Nations, goes back to back again if they do. Eddie Jones in England, again, they're looking to become the first back-to-back team since England did it in 2016, 2017. It's possible. It's possible they can do it. I don't know that it's certain. I think there's a 50% chance that they repeat. That's how highly I think of England. And that's also kind of how highly I think of the other teams. I think there's a lot of good competition in this tournament. And England is, certainly the favorites in this, especially with no Nimac for France. That'll be tough. So they host Scotland. Again, Calcutta Cup this weekend. They host Scotland. That's going to be really fun to watch. They host Italy February 13th. They're at Wales February 27th. They host France March 13th, and then they're at Ireland March 20th. Circle that game, that England-Ireland game on March 20th in Dublin. You got to circle that on your calendar. That game is going to be awesome. It's going to be really fun to watch. Moving on, we got Scotland. God, what a team Scotland is, huh? With all the stuff that's happened to them in the last year and a bit. I'm really excited to see Gregor Townsend coach again. I think I said at the end of 2020, at the end of my end of the year rugby pod on this show, I said that Townsend was probably the most likely to be fired, and then a week later, Scotland re-signs him for 2 more years. So what do I know? I thought his job security was in doubt after 2019, where, at the Rugby World Cup, they lost to Ireland, they lost to Japan, and they missed out on a knockout stage. I remember talking to some people who were little skeptical of Townsend, and then they finished 4th in this year's Six Nations, but it wasn't a great 4th. It was definitely a kind of dragged. They were dragging their feet a bit to get to 4th. Was not great last year for Scotland. Finn Russell, he should be back for the whole tournament. He had a few issues with Townsend. Didn't play. I think he missed out on 3 or 4 games last year because he was out after curfew, I believe, in Dublin ahead of their opening Six Nations match last year in 2020 against Ireland. Russell was out late and didn't get to play. And then he came back for a few games or a few times last year for Scotland, and then he had an injury and he didn't play at the end because of an injury. So Russell should be back, hopefully healthy. Hopefully will play for the full tournament with Scotland, and maybe that helps rejuvenate this team a little bit because they need it. They were struggling last year at times. They were tough to watch. And you know what? I think now they can, start to get something going. They can get the ball rolling a little bit. They have the consistency. They know all their guys should be there. So hopefully that goes for them. That goes well for them. It's really tough, for Townsend, because coaching Scotland in the Six Nations, it's like being the coach of the North Carolina football team, the University of North Carolina football team. You're not a bad team. It's just, you have Alabama, which is England, and you have Clemson, which is France, that you have to beat in order to win this thing. It's not easy, and it takes a lot, and maybe they can do it this year, but I don't think so. Scotland hasn't won this tournament since 1999 when it was 5 nations. So I might have cursed Scotland. I was born in the fall of 1999. So I might be the reason why Scotland doesn't do so well. And I love Scotland. I love the colors. I love the fans. I like Townsend. I like their players. I like this team. I really do like watching Scotland play. I just feel like I might have cursed them. So sorry, Scotland fans, if I'm, the wrath of all your pain. Scotland hasn't beat England in Twickenham since 1983. That'll be a major upset if they can get it done this weekend. Was it 2019, I believe, was when they tied the 38-38 game. So we'll see if Scotland can pull off an upset this week. There shouldn't be any fans in any stadium for a little while, so that might help Scotland. Who knows? So yeah, take a look. Watch out for Russell Hogg, Jamie Ritchie, Cameron Redpath. His father Brian won 60 caps for Scotland, so now his son Cameron will be. I would think he's in the starting 15 for Scotland. I believe, their center. He's going to be their center this year, so look out for Cameron Redpath. He's going to be really fun to watch. So, yeah, Scotland, they're at England this weekend. They host Wales on February 13th. They're at France February 28th, and then some nice back-to-backs where they host Ireland March 14th, and then they're hosting Italy March 20th. So those are some really, really nice games for Scotland. Nice way to end the tournament for them. Let's move on to another interesting team, Wales. Wales, it's a make or break year, I think, for Wayne Pivac. That's kind of the consensus I'm getting from around the rugby community. Last year was they started off really well against Italy and then just floundered the rest of the way. Was not good for the rest of the year, even at the Autumn Nations or the Six Nations. So it kind of feels like make or break for Pivac. 3 wins should be considered a successful season, I would think, for Wales if they could, beat Scotland, Italy, Ireland. I would call that a successful year for them. If they could win, they have enough talent to win this tournament. I would say. It's just the coaching hasn't been up to par. They fired their defense coach late last year. It feels like they're still trying to gel and get the chemistry together. So if they win it all, great. But I think most people are just happy if Wales can get 3 wins this year. Players to watch, Justin Topurik. He's their open side flanker. He's their 7. He's going to be really good. Someone that you might not know now, but you're going to know him at the end of the Six Nations. It's kind of the same with Josh Navidi. He's in the back row. He hasn't played since August due to injury. So, again, somebody that people might have forgot, but he's going to get a lot of time. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to succeed with Wales. Dan Bigger, he's their fly half. George North, he's a wing. Josh Adams, their wing. Josh Adams was arguably, I think, the best player for Wales. He was arguably their most valuable player last year. He was sensational on the wing. He, was able to get the tries when they kind of needed them. But yeah, we'll see if he can do that again this year. Again, incredible talent. Don't forget about Alan Wynne-Jones, their captain. I don't know that I think he's going to try, but I don't know that he's going to be ready for the next Rugby World Cup in 2023. So it'd be nice maybe if they could get him a Six Nations championship between now and then, at least give him some sort of send-off, but not sure about Alan Wynne-Jones. So again, Wales matches, they host Ireland February 3rd. They're at Scotland February 13th. They host England February 27th. They are at Italy March 13th and at France March 20th. Those are going to be 2 kind of iffy games heading into the last 2 weeks of the tournament at Italy. And then at France, March 13th and 20th. Just a note with Wales. Saturday will be the first match at Millennium Stadium in almost a year. February 22nd, 2020 was the last time that a game was held at Millennium Stadium. The stadium has been used as a temporary hospital during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was at one point it hosted 300 beds and it had space to increase to 2,000 if needed. It was the second biggest hospital in the UK, and the cost was approximately £8 altogether. So I just want to give a quick shout out to the frontline workers in Wales, to the Welsh government for making that happen. And it's kind of too bad that we aren't doing it now, but it's just something that I thought should be mentioned and should be recognized, because there are just some things that are bigger than rugby, and that's COVID-19 and the pandemic and how that's been hitting us. Ireland. Let's talk about Ireland. Ireland had a nice 2020, I thought, under new head coach Andy Farrell. A lot of people are saying that they're kind of the same Ireland team after Joe Schmidt when he retired or he left after the 2019 Rugby World Cup. I see why people are saying that, but I still think this Ireland team can perform well. They have a great load of talent. They aren't quite England or France, but I'd say they can be a top 5 team in the world. They're all along the lines of Australia. I would say the same thing about Australia. They're not, maybe not on some days they are, but maybe not quite a top 5 team right now, but very good and can be competitive any day. There's quite a bit of talent on this team, and nobody should be taking Ireland lightly. I don't think anybody should be, taking them lightly or not taking them seriously. But I really am excited to see Ireland. I think they'll finish third in this year's Six Nations again. They had a pathway to winning on the final weekend last year. They might have the same sort of deal this year. Players to watch for Ireland, of course, Johnny Sexton. He's 35. He's their fly half. He's gonna try, I think, to play in the next Rugby World Cup. He's been playing lights out. He's been playing phenomenal. I expect the same here in this next World Cup, or in this next Six Nations. Connor Murray, he's their scrum half. He's incredible. And I think many people are kind of hoping that he takes his talents to the next level. Like they want another gear out of Connor Murray, and it might happen at this Six Nations. He's a really fun player, really fun to watch. And he might even get better. James Lowe is making his Ireland Six Nations debut. He played for Ireland in the fall at the Autumn Nations, but he fulfilled the residency rule. He's from New Zealand. He played for the Maui All Blacks, and now he can be playing for Ireland in the Six Nations. So watch out for him on the wing. And James Ryan, 24, he's becoming one of the best locks in the world, 6'8", 256 pounds. And he had a little butting of heads moment with Mario Itoje against England last year. I'm excited to see how well he does against him this year. That's why, March 20th is going to be a game that you're going to want to watch between England and Ireland. Matches for Ireland, they're at Wales this weekend, so they're at Millennium Stadium against Wales this weekend. They're hosting France on Valentine's Day. They're at Italy February 27th. They're at Scotland March 14th, and then they host England March 20th. Luckily, they got their 2 home games against their, the best competition against France and England. There's a world in which they can go undefeated. So watch out for Ireland too. It's gonna be really fun. Yeah, it's gonna be really fun to watch. So to give you kind of my predictions, rankings on how I see the Six Nations going, I think England finishes first. I think England's just too good. Eddie Jones is that good of a coach. England should finish first once again. Second, I have France. I got France finishing second. Even without Nitamac, they're still really competitive. They're really fun to watch. I hope they gel. I hope Jalibert, I hope Carbonell, I hope both of them step up. And it's kind of a Moneyball thing where you're hoping that the 2 of them can replace Nitamac. It won't be easy, but you're kind of hoping that. I got Ireland finishing third. Ireland's looking really sharp, of course. I just spoke on Ireland. I think they finished third. I think this team is too talented to finish any lower than third. That's my feeling on Ireland. And then fourth, I'm going to say Scotland. I'm going to say Scotland takes fourth just because Scotland is really – they are good. They have the talent. They're kind of hoping to brush the end of 2019 and 2020 away. Put that under the rug. It doesn't matter. We're in 2021. It's a new year, new opportunities. That's why I got Scotland finishing fourth. I have Wales fifth. And again, it's not for a lack of talent. It's just the coaching, the vibe. They have the same opportunity as Scotland. Scotland and them are kind of in the same boat. I just trust Townsend more than Pivac at this point, but Wales they could finish first. It could happen too. I wouldn't be totally surprised by that. I'd be a bit surprised, obviously, but I have them finishing fifth, and then Italy is sixth. They're still rebuilding. They're still working. Growing every day is Italy. I can't wait to see how well they do against teams this year in the Six Nations. So that being said, that's the Six Nations preview. We're going to take a break, and then we will be back to discuss the sevens, the World Sevens, and what's going on there. And hopefully, we can kind of provide some updates or some light on the situation in case you aren't totally aware of what's going on in sevens rugby right now. So we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a couple seconds. Welcome back, Ian here. In case you aren't already, go follow us on Instagram at SpeakURPeace. We're back here discussing Rugby Sevens and kind of what's going on with them and what the deal is there. So I have about 5 noteworthy things that I'm going to discuss here. The first thing, so Monaco has been selected, the country of Monaco has been selected to host the World Rugby Sevens Repechage Tournament. So that's the final qualifying event for the Olympics to be held on June 19th and 20th, 2021 in Monaco. So basically about a month before the Summer Olympics, assuming that the Olympics are going to go on. So for that tournament, there's going to be interregional preparation tournaments, which will take place in Madrid on February 20th and 21st and February 27th to 28th. So over 2 weekends, these preparation tournaments in February 20th and 21st, 27th, 28th. I don't know if it's been announced where in Madrid they're taking place, but they're going to take place in Madrid. They're hosted by the Spanish Rugby Federation. So that will feature 12 teams and 12 men's teams and 12 women's teams, I believe, participating. Yeah. So 12 men's teams and 12 women's teams taking place over those 2 weeks. So the women's teams are Argentina, Colombia, France, Hong Kong, Jamaica, Kazakhstan, Madagascar, Mexico, Papua New Guinea, Russia, Samoa, Tunisia. Those are the teams that will be participating in the women's competition. And again, there's 2 spots. So essentially 2 of those 12 countries that I mentioned, Argentina, Colombia, France, Hong Kong, Jamaica, Kazakhstan, Madagascar, Mexico, Papua New Guinea, Russia, Samoa, Tunisia. 2 of those countries will make the sevens tournament in the Olympics on the women's side. The men's tournament will also have 12 teams, but there's going to be 1 that makes the tournament out of those 12. The tournament will include Brazil, Chile, China, France, Hong Kong, Ireland, Jamaica, Mexico, Samoa, Tonga, Uganda, Zimbabwe. So again, 1 out of those 12 teams will be going to the Olympics, but they're all those 12 teams are going to be playing in the preparation. So those tournaments in Madrid and then the qualification tournament in June. So that's the second thing I want to announce. Also with that second thing, World Rugby is putting all this on. World Rugby is in charge of this. So I think it's costing them approximately $4 million US to put these tournaments on, both the tournament in Monaco and the tournament in Madrid. Number 3. So there's going to be 2 women's events on the HSBC World Rugby Sevens series. So they have a men's series and they have the women's series. The women's series will have 2 events held at the France's National Rugby Center, I believe, in Marcoussis, which is about if you look on Google Maps, it's about a 30-minute car drive south of Paris. And basically there's going to be 2 women's events, 2 women's Rugby 7 series events that'll be held on, what are the dates? May 15th and 16th and May 22nd, 23rd. So mid-May, 2 women's 7 series events in Marcoussis. Look out for that. That's the third thing I want to say. The fourth thing I'm going to go into are the Olympics. The Olympics, as of this time, as of me recording this, it's about 1 p.m. Pacific time on February 1st. As of right now, the Olympics are still officially a go. The Olympics are still on. There were reports, I think Bleacher Report sent out an article about basically Bleacher Report saying the Olympics aren't happening. They already know this in Japan, and they're trying to find a way to figure that out. I think the Japanese government are still going ahead with it. They're still going to try to go ahead with it. They've invested a lot of money to make the Olympics happen. A lot of money to make this happen. I don't think there's going to be fans. I don't think they're expecting fans. I've also heard in Japan that the Japanese people are not enthusiastic about having the Olympics. They're not thrilled with people from other countries coming over. They wouldn't be going as fans. I think there's a real outcry of going to the Olympics. I can't remember. I can't remember even if this is official, but I just want to say, don't quote me on this, but I think about 80% of Japanese people aren't happy with wouldn't be happy with the Olympics going on. However, again, as of me recording this right now, the Olympics are full go. They are still planning to have them. The Rugby Sevens tournaments, both the men's and the women's, would take place at Tokyo Stadium on July 26th and 31st. I will let you know. We will discuss that if the Olympics continue. As right now, they are, again, Rugby Sevens tournaments, men and women's, taking place July 26th and 30 through the 31st at Olympic Stadium or Tokyo Stadium. I don't think that's the official Olympic Stadium, but Tokyo Stadium, that's what's happening there. Finally, the fifth thing, the men's World Rugby Sevens series. So originally they wanted to have events. I want to say in where they wanted to have events in Hong Kong and Singapore at some point last year. Yeah, they were originally proposed in April, is what it was. They were originally proposed in April to have Hong Kong and Singapore, because that's when they usually have Hong Kong and Singapore host the World Rugby Sevens Series events. There is in April, and now, as of right now, they are going to be held in October and November. So October 29th and 30th, they're scheduled to be in Singapore, and then November 5th through the 7th, they're going to be in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong event is more from a qualifying perspective. It's more important because they have the qualifier event, which is where the teams not on the top series, they try and there's a qualifier event for teams below, like the Germanys and the Brazils of the world, to try and qualify for the next season to be at the top. So that's kind of what's going on with Hong Kong and Singapore. So just to repeat that, the men's World Rugby Sevens Series event scheduled at this time, put asterisks next to it because we don't know for sure, but it's going to be October 29th and 30th in Singapore at their national stadium, and then November 5th through the 7th in Hong Kong. Obviously, there's been unrest in Hong Kong for a long time now. They've still had tournaments there. I don't think that's going to be an issue. The biggest issue with all of these events and all of this happening is COVID and making this happen due to the pandemic. The Seven series does not make as much money, does not generate as much revenue as the 15s do or the club rugby. But there's still a lot of people who want to see the Sevens. There's still a lot of people. Hong Kong relies heavily on the Sevens for revenue. And I don't know that they're going to have a full stadium. But it's something to look out for. It's something to watch happen. So just let me run down the Sevens order one more time, just in case you forgot. So Monaco has been selected to host the final qualifying tournament for the Olympics. That'll happen June 19th and 20th, 2021 at whatever's, I don't know what the stadium is in Monaco. There's 2 women's spots and 1 men's spot will be decided at this tournament. The preparation for that tournament will take place in Madrid on February 20th and 21st and February 27th, 28th. It'll feature 12 teams on the men's side and 12 teams on the women's side. There's 2 women's spots up for grabs in the Olympics, and there's 1 men's spot up for grabs in the Olympics. The women's teams that are competing for a spot are Argentina, Colombia, France, Hong Kong, Jamaica, Kazakhstan, Madagascar, Mexico, Papua New Guinea, Russia, Samoa, and Tunisia. Two of those countries will be playing in the Olympics. They will know that at Monaco in June. The men's tournament, which again, one spot up for grabs between Brazil, Chile, China, France, Hong Kong, Ireland, Jamaica, Mexico, Samoa, Tonga, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. Okay. Now, all of this, is just assuming that the Olympics are on. The Olympics are still planning to go ahead at this time from July 26th to July 31st. That's when the Rugby Sevens is. July 26th to 31st. Obviously, the Olympics go on much longer than that. But from July 26th to July 31st, the Rugby Sevens will take place at Tokyo Stadium. On the HSBC World Rugby Sevens Series, we have two events right now scheduled on the women's side. They will take place in Marcoussis in France, which, again, a 30-minute car drive south of Paris, according to Google Maps, over 2 weekends on May 15th and 16th and May 22nd, 23rd. Two events at mid-May in France on the women's side. On the men's side, two events are scheduled. One on October 29th and 30th in Singapore, and one on from November 5th to November 7th at Hong Kong. That's what's going on the Rugby Sevens side of things. There probably will be no Canada Sevens, no US Sevens. Right now, it looks like for those tournaments, the closest thing we have are the women's taking place in France in May, and then the men's taking place in Singapore and Hong Kong, October, November. That's the Sevens series. We're going to take one more break, and then we'll be back to discuss some other talking points before we head out here. Don't go away. We'll be back in a bit. All right, we're back to wrap up the podcast here. We just got a few talking notes that I thought I should bring up before we go here. The Rugby World Cup 2021, that's the women's tournament that's happening in New Zealand in September. They announced, I can't remember what's happened the last time since I've been on here, but anyways, the groups have been announced, the schedule has been announced, the venues have been announced. It's all taking place in New Zealand in September. They announced last week, I believe it was, that New Zealand is aiming to break the attendance record at a Women's World Cup. The current record is presumed to be in France at the 2014 Rugby World Cup, where they had 20,000 people at the final. World Rugby didn't announce a figure that they were aiming for or that they were shooting for, so I'm assuming that just whatever the, either the opening game when New Zealand plays Australia or the final, it's either going to be the big figure that they're going to announce at some point, and then they're going to talk about how they're growing women's rugby, which is true, but they haven't really given us a figure as to what they're aiming for, what they're shooting for. Anyways, New Zealand and Australia, they're scheduled to meet in the opener in the first game of this year's Rugby World Cup. That'll take place September 18th at Eden Park, which is the big national stadium for rugby in New Zealand. So that's going to be really cool. Other games that are noteworthy that they announced, Canada will be playing the US on Thursday, September 23rd in New Zealand. It's scheduled to take place at 4:45 p.m. Pacific time on the Wednesday before. So that's Wednesday the 22nd, I believe, is when Canada will be playing the US at the Women's World Cup, the Women's Rugby World Cup. In New Zealand, they're in Group B, I want to say. I think they're in Group B. And then the other game I should note, France will be playing England September 28th in New Zealand. For myself, that's 11:15 p.m. Monday Pacific time. So take a look at France versus England on the Monday night, my time. So that's Tuesday, New Zealand. Be sure to watch Canada, US. Watch all the games. We'll be covering all the games on SYP Rugby as well. So you'll want to take a look at that. And then other thing, they just announced earlier today, dialogue has started on upcoming with countries potentially hosting the next World Cup events in rugby. So pretty much they're talking with the nations now. That's what February 2021 is all about. They're starting the dialogue phase in May 2021. It's the candidates phase where candidates will construct their detailed proposals, as World Rugby says, with World Rugby. So pretty much all these countries are constructing their proposals. They're getting all their venues and security and infrastructure, all that sort of squared away starting in May. I mean, I'm sure there's some people who are doing it now, but really they're really constructing it on May 1st. That's when they're really starting to get things going. And then by this time next year, February 2022, it's going to be the evaluation phase. So bids will be evaluated by criteria agreed upon by the World Rugby Council. So essentially, starting this time next year, a year from now, which is kind of crazy to think, bids will be evaluated by World Rugby, and that goes for both the men's and the women's tournament. So just to give you an idea, so the next men's tournament is in 2 years in France in 2023. The next Rugby World Cup after that would be in 2025. That's a women's tournament. It's kind of the women's it's a bit more of a toss up because it's not as, I mean, you don't make as much money as say the big World Cup, the men's World Cup, but there's still a great opportunity to host with the women's World Cup. That's 2025, and then 2029 is the other women's World Cup. Yeah, pretty much 2025, 2029. That's when the women will be hosting their World Cups. Just to throw a bunch of countries at you as the potential hosts, I would say the U.S. might be in contention for one. Australia, Portugal, Wales, England. But something might be, something else might be on the table in a year's time. But I would say those 5 countries, Canada might have a shot too. 6 countries really take that, though. I would definitely, those 6 countries will be interested in hosting, I would think. On the men's side, they have World Cups in 2027 and 2031. 2027 right now is looking like it's between Australia and Russia. Australia were co-hosts in 1987 with New Zealand, and then they hosted all by themselves in 2003. The last time it was in an Oceania country was New Zealand in 2011. So Australia could certainly be in contention in 2027. Russia, they've had no previous experience hosting a Rugby World Cup. They hosted the FIFA World Cup, the Soccer World Cup in 2018. So that's basically what they're going to go off of, is when they hosted the Soccer World Cup. Sochi hosted the Olympics in 2014. So they're essentially going mostly off the FIFA World Cup that they hosted in 2018. And they're hoping that can lead them into some sort of hosting of the tournament in 2027. Who knows? I would say Australia has the upper hand in terms of better facilities and better fan base, but they might also want to grow the game, World Rugby. So that's why Russia might get the host in 2027. 2031, I think from what I've gathered, the lead candidate is the United States. Again, another country to help, World Rugby grow the game. The 1994 FIFA World Cup, which was hosted by the U.S., was the most successful in terms of revenue, I think TV ratings, all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of what to expect in terms of what we might see from rugby from the U.S. in 10 years' time. There's certainly the venues, there's certainly the infrastructure, there's certainly the people who would go, but we'll see. That just something to throw out there would be the U.S. hosting in 2031. I think they're the leading candidate right now. Another country, just kind of throwing them out there, is Argentina. They made a plan to bid in 2027, but then they withdrew their bid in April just because of the pandemic. So they were not able to fulfill their bid, so they withdrew. They could try again in 2031, but it's unclear at this point. No one really knows for sure. So yeah, dialogue starting. So in about May, we'll hear the candidates and we'll see who's going to be in contention to host all these Rugby World Cups. I can't wait for that. That should be great. So that's the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be doing these probably regularly on Mondays. Mondays we'll be doing like rugby. I'm trying to get some F1, some racing podcasts in here too. That might be happening on Tuesdays. I work mostly on Thursday, Fridays during the day, and maybe I'll do some evening stuff. But Mondays are going to mostly be rugby, I would think. Tuesdays are going to be some F1 racing. Again, this is all just myself. This is just myself just talking and wanting to do some more content so I don't take up the main SYP feed. So in case you aren't already doing so, again, go follow Speak Your Piece on Instagram at Speak Your Piece. I think we're Speak Your Piece, the whole like properly 3, Speak Your Piece 3 on Twitter. In case you like rugby and you're interested in rugby, go follow our rugby page at SYP Rugby. I'll share the links to that as well. Thank you very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this. Please tell your friends. This has been great. We'll have more stuff coming for you in the next couple of weeks. Just a reminder again, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll share the link to that. We're on Spotify. Go listen to us on Spotify or at iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on there. This week it's Super Selections weekend. So pretty much over Friday, Saturday, Sunday, with the Super Bowl being this weekend, we got big selection game planned days. So essentially you just have to have the most picks or the most games predicted correctly over 3 days, and you get a free SYP hoodie. You get a free Speak Your Piece hoodie. So be sure to vote in that as well on our main story Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then we're on Instagram Live Friday night and Saturday night around probably about 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. Be sure to tune into that as well. So thank you very much again for all your support. We hope you enjoy Speak Your Piece. Please tell your friends, and we can't wait to do this again soon. Thank you very much.